How the Mongols almost changed the Crusades forever. What if I told you the Mongols, yes, the same warriors who conquered half the known world, almost became allies of the Christian Crusaders? Imagine a world where Mongol horsemen rode alongside knights in shining armor, clashing with the Muslim forces of the Middle East. This almost happened. And if it had, the Crusades' world history, maybe even our present, could have turned out very differently. But how did this near alliance form? Why did it fall apart? And what would have happened if it had succeeded? Stay tuned, because today we're diving into one of the greatest what-ifs of history: how the Mongols almost changed the Crusades forever. The Mongols weren't just brutal conquerors, they were master strategists. As they carved through Asia and the Middle East, they saw an opportunity, one that involved the Christian West. They reached out to the Crusaders, offering something shocking: an alliance, an unstoppable force of Mongol warriors and European knights against their common enemy, the Muslim world. But fate had other plans, and what followed was a tangled web of diplomacy, betrayal, and missed opportunities that could have rewritten history. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into the most fascinating twists of history. Now let's get into it. By the 13th century, the Crusades had been raging for over 100 years. Christian Europe and the Muslim world were locked in a brutal struggle over the Holy Land, with both sides winning and losing ground. Meanwhile, far to the east, a storm was brewing, one more powerful than anything the medieval world had seen before. The Mongols, under Genghis Khan and his successors, had exploded out of the Asian steppes like a force of nature. They crushed kingdoms, shattered empires, and rewrote the map of the world in just a few decades. They destroyed the Khwarezmian Empire, steamrolled through Persia, and eventually set their sights on the Middle East. And that's where things get really interesting. The Mongols weren't just expanding, they were pragmatic. They saw enemies, but they also saw potential allies. And in the Crusaders, they found a possible partner in their campaign against the Muslim world. By the mid-1200s, the Mongols had launched devastating invasions into the Islamic heartlands, tearing through Baghdad and obliterating the Abbasid Caliphate in 1258. They then turned their attention to the powerful Mamluk Sultanate in Egypt, one of the strongest Muslim forces of the time. The Mongols knew they couldn't take on the Mamluks alone, so they reached out to an unlikely group, the Crusaders. The Mongol-Crusader alliance, a near miss. 1260, the Mongols sent emissaries to the Christian rulers of Europe and the Crusader states in the Levant, proposing an alliance. The offer was tempting. A combined force of Mongols and Crusaders could finally crush the Muslim forces and reclaim Jerusalem for Christendom. The Crusaders, exhausted from decades of war, saw an opportunity. But there was a problem. The Mongols weren't Christians. In fact, they had their own religious beliefs, a mix of shamanism and Nestorian Christianity. More importantly, the Mongols had no interest in giving Jerusalem to the Crusaders. They wanted it for themselves. Even so, some Crusaders saw potential in the alliance. The Mongols had already weakened the Muslim world by destroying the Abbasids and killing the Caliph. If the Crusaders joined them, they might have been able to deal the final blow to Islam's dominance in the region. But not everyone agreed. The European Christian world was divided. Some saw the Mongols as nothing more than godless barbarians, no better than the Muslim forces they were fighting. The Pope hesitated. European kings debated. And while they argued, the Mongols acted. The turning point. A lost opportunity. The year 1260 marked a decisive moment, not just for the Mongols, but for the entire Middle East and possibly even world history. At this point, the Mongol Empire was at its peak, having steamrolled through Persia, destroyed Baghdad, and obliterated the Abbasid Caliphate. Their next target? The Mamluk-controlled territories of Egypt and Syria. But there was one major problem. The Mongols were stretched thin. Their leader, Mongke Khan, had recently died, forcing many Mongol generals to return home for the succession crisis. Hulagu Khan, the Mongol commander in the region, had to leave behind only a small force led by his trusted general Kitbuka to continue the campaign. Recognizing their precarious position, the Mongols sought allies, and the Crusaders seemed like the perfect choice. At first, the Crusaders played along. Instead of attacking the Mongols, they allowed them to pass through Crusader-held lands in the Levant. But when the time came to fully commit, the Crusaders hesitated. Why? Because they feared that a Mongol victory might be just as dangerous as a Mamluk one. If the Mongols crushed the Mamluks, what would stop them from turning on the Crusaders next? Despite their hatred for the Muslim forces, Many Christian leaders saw the Mongols as unpredictable, even barbaric, and weren't willing to take the risk. Meanwhile, the Mamluks were preparing for battle. Their leader, Sultan Kutuz, saw what was coming and decided to strike first. With his brilliant general Baybars, he lured the Mongols into an ambush at the Battle of Ain Jalut, a fight that would change history. For the first time, the seemingly unstoppable Mongols suffered a devastating defeat. Kebuka was captured and executed, and the Mongol forces were forced into retreat. This shattered the illusion of Mongol invincibility, giving their enemies hope and shifting the balance of power in the region. Had the Crusaders joined the Mongols at Ain Jalut, the battle might have gone very differently. The combined Mongol-Crusader force could have overpowered the Mamluks, wiping them out as a major power and giving the Mongols control over the Middle East. From there, Jerusalem could have fallen under Mongol rule, possibly even becoming a Christian stronghold once again. But instead, the Crusaders remained neutral, missing what could have been their last, best chance to reclaim the Holy Land. In the end, the Mongols' failure at Ain Jalut changed the course of history. Their advance into the Middle East was permanently halted, and the Mamluks emerged as the dominant Muslim power in the region. The Crusaders, meanwhile, had sealed their own fate. Within a few decades, their last strongholds in the Holy Land would fall, bringing the Crusades to an end. If they had chosen differently, if they had allied with the Mongols, world history might have taken a drastically different path. What if? The alternate timeline. Let's imagine for a moment that the Crusaders had agreed to the Mongol alliance. With the combined strength of Mongol cavalry and European knights, the Mamluks might have been utterly crushed at the Battle of Ain Jalut, eliminating the last major Muslim power in the region. If Egypt had fallen to the Mongols, the entire Islamic world could have been thrown into chaos, giving the Mongols and their Crusader allies a clear path to Jerusalem. The Holy Land, fought over for centuries, might have been secured under Mongol rule, with Christian leaders as their vassals. But then what? The Mongols were not known for their long-term governance. They were conquerors first, administrators second. Would they have allowed the Crusaders to keep Jerusalem, or would they have claimed it for themselves? And even if the alliance had lasted, what about Europe? The Mongols had already invaded Hungary and Poland in the past. Would their friendship with the Crusaders have prevented them from eventually turning west? Could Europe have been next on their list of conquests? And what about religion? The Mongols were religiously flexible, but would they have converted to Christianity? Or would their growing empire have led to a completely new religious dynamic between East and West? This single alliance had the potential to shift global power in ways we can barely imagine, creating a world where Mongol rule stretched from China to the Mediterranean, perhaps even beyond. The Crusades, as we know them, might have ended not in failure, but in a strange, uneasy victory, one where Christian Europe found itself dependent on the very same Mongols who had once terrorized their lands. Would that have been a blessing or a curse? We'll never know. But one thing is certain. If this alliance had happened, our world today would be unrecognizable. History is full of moments like this, points where a single decision could have changed everything. The near alliance between the Mongols and the Crusaders is one of those moments, a forgotten chapter that reminds us how fragile and unpredictable history can be. So what do you think? Would the Mongol-Crusader alliance have worked? Or was it doomed from the start? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on more hidden stories from the past. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.